Right now, as you listen to this, there is a voice in your head. Not my voice. Your own voice. It is reading these words back to you. It is commenting on them. It is already forming an opinion about where this is going. You have been hearing this voice every waking second of your entire life. And for most of that time, you probably assumed that everyone else had one too. They don't. Not everyone. And that discovery, made publicly for the first time in 2020, quietly shook how scientists and ordinary people understand what it means to be conscious. This voice you are hearing right now is called inner speech, and the science of what it actually is, where it comes from, and whose voice it really belongs to, is far stranger than anyone expected. Let's start with what we know. The inner voice is not one thing. Psychologist Charles Fernyhough at Durham University in the UK spent 2 decades studying inner speech and found something that surprised him. Most people assume their inner voice is simply a running commentary, a narrator, a stream of words describing what is happening and what to do about it. But Fernyhough found that inner speech is far more complex. It comes in multiple distinct forms. The first is what he called expanded inner speech. This is the form most people imagine when they think of an inner voice. Full sentences, complete thoughts, a voice that sounds like you, speaking clearly inside your own head. The second form is condensed inner speech. This is more like shorthand. Instead of a full sentence, a single word or image carries the entire weight of a complete thought. You don't think, I need to leave soon, or I will be late. You just think, late. And the whole meaning is compressed into that single word. The third form is dialogic inner speech. And this is the one that changes everything. Fernyhough discovered that for many people, inner speech is not a monologue. It is a dialogue, a conversation between 2 distinct voices. Both of them, you, but representing different perspectives, different parts of your thinking, arguing with each other, or exploring both sides of a question. When you lie awake at night, going back and forth about a decision you cannot make, that is dialogic inner speech. When you replay a conversation and imagine what you should have said, that is dialogic inner speech. When you rehearse a difficult conversation before you have it, that is dialogic inner speech. Your inner voice is not just narrating your life. It is having a conversation with itself about your life every single day. Now here is where it gets stranger. In 2020, a man named Kyle Markman posted a question on Reddit that nobody had thought to ask publicly before. He asked whether other people had an internal monologue. He asked because he had recently learned that most people do, and he was stunned because he doesn't. Kyle has no inner voice, no running commentary, no stream of words inside his head. When he thinks, he experiences something more like a direct sense of knowing images, impressions, and feelings, without any verbal language accompanying them. The Reddit thread went viral, and overnight, millions of people discovered something they had assumed was universal about human experience wasn't. Scientists call the absence of inner speech an endophasia, and current estimates suggest roughly 5 to 10% of people experience little or no inner monologue. They have always been different in this way. They just had no way of knowing it, because nobody ever thought to ask. Imagine living your entire life, assuming everyone processes the world the same way, and then discovering that for some people, thought doesn't sound like anything at all. But here is the question that sits underneath all of this. Whose voice is your inner voice, actually? Most people say it sounds like their own voice, but research tells a more complicated story. Studies by psychologist Russell Hurlburt at the University of Nevada used a method called descriptive experience sampling. Participants wore an earpiece. A beep would sound at random moments throughout the day. At each beep, they had to stop and report exactly what was happening in their mind at that precise moment. What Hurlburt found was that people's inner voices are far less consistent than they believe. For many participants, the voice they heard in their head was not always their own. Sometimes it was the voice of a parent, sometimes a teacher, sometimes someone who had criticized them years ago. Other people's voices, absorbed from years of interaction, had been recruited into the inner monologue and were commenting on their lives without their permission. Think about that. The harshest voice inside your head may not be you at all. It may be someone else's voice that moved in without asking and never left. This connects to something the Russian developmental psychologist Lev Vygotsky proposed in the 1930s. Vygotsky believed that the inner voice does not begin inside the mind at all. It begins outside. When children are very young, they narrate their own actions out loud. They say what they are doing as they do it. Watch me. I'm building a tower. Now I'm putting the big block on top. Vygotsky argued that this external speech gradually turns inward. The child stops saying it out loud, but they continue saying it inside. The inner voice is not born with us. It is learned. It is the voices of other people, caregivers, teachers, siblings, that we gradually absorb and internalize until they become the voice we call our own. You did not develop your inner voice alone. You built it out of the voices that surrounded you when you were very small. And here is what makes this finding quietly unsettling. If the inner voice is assembled from the voices of others, then the harshest things your inner voice says to you, the criticism, the doubt, the voice that says, you are not good enough, those are not your judgments. They are someone else's, borrowed without permission, kept without question, running as if they were your own. There is one more piece to this, and it changes how you understand what thought actually is. Deaf people who use sign language have an inner voice too, but not in words. Research by neurologist Gregory Hickok at the University of California, Irvine, found that deaf signers experience a form of inner speech in which they visualize themselves signing. Their inner voice is movement. It is gesture. It is hands forming shapes in the mind's eye, rather than words sounding in the mind's ear. This tells us something profound. Inner speech is not the same as language. It is not just words. It is the brain's attempt to represent thought to itself in whatever sensory language that particular brain was built to use. For hearing people, it sounds like words. For signers, it looks like hands. For some people, it barely exists at all. And for all of us, it is the most constant companion we have. More constant than any person. More constant than any relationship. More constant than anything external at all. The voice in your head has been with you since before you started school. It has been in the room for every decision you ever made. It was there for every embarrassing moment, every private triumph, every moment of doubt, every moment of unexpected joy. And for most of your life, you have probably treated it as simply the sound of your own thinking, as if it were neutral, as if it were just you observing your own life. But it is not neutral. It was built from other voices. It speaks in multiple forms you never consciously chose. It sometimes belongs to people who hurt you years ago and whose opinions you would never ask for now. And for roughly 1 in 10 people on this planet, it doesn't make a sound at all. The voice you have been hearing, every second of your conscious life, is more constructed, more borrowed, more complicated than you ever knew. And it has been the loudest thing in your world the entire time. So what do you do with that? You start by noticing it, not silencing it, not fighting it, just noticing that it is there, and asking occasionally, is this my voice, or is this someone else's? Because the moment you ask that question, you are no longer just inside it. You are watching it. And that small distance is one of the most important spaces you can create. Think about the voice you heard as you listened to this video. Was it yours? Mostly. Probably. But maybe not entirely. And now that you know that, you can listen to it a little differently. Not every voice in your head is telling you the truth. Not every voice in your head is yours. But all of it is worth listening to. At least enough to ask where it came from. Because the conversation that has been happening inside your head for every waking second of your entire life is the most private, most intimate conversation that exists. Nobody else will ever hear it. Nobody else will ever fully know what it sounds like. Not your closest friend, not the person who knows you best. It is entirely, completely, irreducibly yours. Even if parts of it were borrowed, even if parts of it aren't telling you the truth, even if it speaks in forms you never consciously chose, it is yours. And now you know its name. Inner speech. The conversation you have been having with yourself every waking second, since before you could speak. It was always happening. You just didn't know it had a name. And now you're listening to it differently. You're asking whose voice it is. You're noticing when it speaks in full sentences, and when it just whispers a single word, and when it's arguing both sides of something you haven't decided yet. That voice is the most consistent thing about you. More than your job, more than where you live, more than almost anything else you'd call yourself. It was there before any of those things, and it will be there until the end. Right now, in this moment, it is commenting on this sentence. It is deciding whether it agrees. It is forming a response that nobody will ever hear. That is inner speech. And now you know what to call it. You know it comes in 3 forms. You know not everyone has it. You know it was built from voices that weren't originally yours. And you know that the harshest things it says may not belong to you at all. That voice has been your closest companion, your most private audience, your most relentless narrator. It has always been there. And now, for the first time, you know its name. Inner speech. The voice that has been with you since your very first thought. The voice that narrates, debates, compresses, borrows, criticizes, and occasionally, when conditions are right, speaks with a quiet, unmistakable kindness that you know is completely your own. That voice is you. Listen to it carefully.